Hi students, I am going to be covering our creative writing analysis assignment on Google Classroom. This is assignment 6.5. To begin, I want to take a look at the aim with you. So the aim is, how do we analyze an author's use of creative writing techniques? And in this assignment, you had to read two very short chapters from the things they carried. The first one is called Enemies, and the second one is called Friends. So I want you to think about this picture and think about the question. What did you find special when you read the story Enemies? Now, we have done some work already thinking about Vietnam, what it would have been like to go to the Vietnam War. You had your imaginary draft, and we've looked at a lot of these photographs, these artifacts. These are authentic pictures from Vietnam. And so I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a writer who wants to tell stories to make people feel like they are there in the Vietnam War. And how would they do that in a way that's so powerful and captures the reader and makes them feel like they're truly present and they can understand what the characters are going through in the novel or in the story. And so just kind of think about, how would you do that as a writer? What comes to your mind? Hopefully some of these things. So these are common techniques that are often used in creative writing. And I'm going to go over some of these briefly. So first of all, character development. When you're telling a creative story, you want to think about how to really show in depth what that person, that character is like in a well-rounded way, unless you're intentionally leaving information out about them. Think about your upcoming college personal statement. We're going to need to really know what kind of a person you are, and hopefully through your story, if you tell it well, you're going to develop your character out in a well-rounded way so people really know who you are, what you're like, and feel connected to you. The plot is the storyline, and we've learned about that previously in class. Vivid setting. We've also learned about that in The Great Gatsby, where we really felt like we were in the Roaring '20s and we understood what the flappers were like, and the Jazz Age and the Lost Generation, and we did the ginger ale for the Prohibition Station to understand the alcohol ban. So in The Great Gatsby, the setting is very powerful and vivid. Underlying theme means that it's hinted at, it's suggested through the story. Point of view, that is it told in first person point of view where they're using I and me, or is it you, second person point of view, like a speech, or is it told through the eyes of someone else, third person, like how in The Great Gatsby, Nick was telling the story? Or is it just a random voice, like an ominous a figure that we don't know who they are, and they're telling us the story? Dialogue, the use of quotes, conversation. Sometimes creative writers use it a lot, and then there's other creative writers that they refrain from dialogue. They tell the story without using the conversation between characters. And we're going to actually talk about that in a few minutes. Anecdotes. Anecdotes are short stories, little teeny moments or events that take place. And so within a bigger story, often there'll be these little snippets of things that occur, and these are what are called anecdotes. And so we should think of Enemies as an anecdote and Friends as an anecdote, because these are particular short experiences of what happened in the war with these two characters. Metaphors and similes. Remember that these are comparisons, where I drew that diagram for you when we were in school with the two lines and the circle in the middle. The circle is the connecting word. If something is a metaphor, it is saying something is something else. So his head was a basketball. The connecting word is or was, or there's no connecting word. His death stare kind of would be an example. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head where you're suggesting his stare is death. Similes are going to use like or as, and we'll look at some examples in a few minutes. Imaginative language. How does the author really like bring life and color and flavor into their writing? Emotional appeal. How do they make the readers feel something? A lot of that rings true in one of the stories from today's assignment. And then heavy description, really putting in the imagery in the five senses so that we feel present in a story. So now let's move on to what my talking points are for my video. So I'm modeling for you what I want to see you do for the story Friends. So I'm going to be analyzing the creative writing techniques used by Timothy O'Brien in the story Enemies. Okay, I am back. My dinner was burning in the oven. So my talking points. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. I did this assignment as if I were a student and I was going to have to do my Flipgrid video. So the process that I took was, well, I read the story carefully and I thought about what was special to me while I was reading it. So I took notes on the things, the lines that really spoke to me, and I thought through why they spoke to me. So I want you to think back to a few minutes ago when I showed you all of these techniques that are commonly used by creative writers. So what I did is I tried to say, let me find 5 of these techniques that were in the story Enemies, and let me find examples of those techniques. So I'm going to start with character development when I give my speech, and I'm going to discuss, that is Bobby. Everybody say hi to my dog. Bobby was. Take 3. Okay. I'm going to talk about all 5 of these areas in just a moment. So let's pretend that I just went into Flipgrid. I set up whether I wanted to put on a filter or a sticker because I'm a little apprehensive about doing a video. However, I'm not using a black screen to cover my face. This is a video presentation. Sorry, Bobby's drinking water. And so I'm encouraging you, please do use a filter or a sticker if you'd like, but don't put a black screen to cover your face, okay? Try to make yourself get more comfortable with speaking and presenting something because those are important standards for English 11. Okay, so we're on, and 3, 2, 1. Good evening. I chose a few different points that I wanted to address in regard to the story Enemies by Timothy O'Brien. When I read this story, I was looking for areas of the text that I really found special and to me that reflect excellent storytelling and creative writing techniques. The first thing I found super interesting was how descriptive it was in developing the character of Jensen. Now, Jensen is the one that broke Lee Strunk's nose in the beginning, but after Lee Strunk gets shipped off in the helicopter, it's so interesting when you read the text to see his paranoia and anxiety just build and build and build, and it helps us kind of understand what he is like as a person, that he had this rage, this moment of rage where he fought this guy because he thought he stole his jackknife. And that's what's most important, because you think about, he's in war and he thought his weapon was taken. And so this to him probably set him in a true panic because he's afraid. I'm inferring that he's very scared, and without his knife, he felt helpless. And so he beat this guy up to nearly killing him, breaks his nose, the guy's shipped off. When he comes back, he's like, oh my God, what did I do? And now his paranoia builds up and his freaking out comes back because he's so afraid that that Lee Strunk might kill him. So the way that they develop that paranoia and how he's sort of like sleeping, always watching Lee Strunk and never turning his back to him, and it moves on talking about no safe ground, enemies everywhere, no front or rear, and I thought that those particular lines are so powerful because they're not complete sentences. Here, the author, who clearly knows grammar techniques and knows that every sentence needs a subject and a verb, has chosen to use these short, choppy phrases and put periods. They always say you need to know the rules to break the rules. It's clear he knows the rules. Timothy O'Brien knows these aren't sentences, but he's intentionally using these short, choppy lines, these phrases, to help us understand how Dave Jensen is thinking. No safe ground, enemies everywhere, no front or rear. He's all so worried. And it's alluding as well to this underlying theme about, I feel, maybe the topic of war and what it does to a person. I also found this beautiful imaginative language. I love the line where it talks about how he's all paranoid. He's imagining a grenade rolling up to him in the night. And he says, quote, or the tickle of a knife against his ear. And just imagine, like, do that to your ear. Tickle your ear. And we all know, ooh, that's going to give you chills. It's going to give you goosebumps. So it was this great line that makes us really feel how freaked out we would be to feel the tip of a knife blade just touching and coasting against our ear, right? As if someone's going to kill us in moments, but they're torturing you or teasing you with it. So I love that type of language that he uses there to really help us understand the fear that Dave Jensen has. Finally, there are so many similes. My goodness. 3 particular similes are so powerful to me. It talks about when he broke the nose of Lee Strunk, it sounded like a firecracker. So just imagine the sound, right? Remember the senses. So this comparison to the snap of the nose, to that sound of a firecracker really helps us understand how horrible this break was. Then he talks about the paranoia, and the narrator says that for Jensen, it was like fighting 2 different wars. So he's fighting this war in his mind that his partner in his own platoon is going to kill him and sneak up on him, but he's also fighting Vietnam. He's fighting in Vietnam. He's fighting the North Vietnamese, or sometimes just this nameless enemy in the jungle. But what a great comparison that's being made here. The paranoia that he has is like fighting another war. And then the final one I love is when he uses the hammer. He says he grabs the barrel of a pistol and using it like a hammer, he breaks his own nose. So how powerful is that line? You could just picture somebody taking a gun and going and hitting hard on their face like a hammer. And it develops this idea that, boy, Jensen is so paranoid that he's doing this crazy thing. And we're all like, oh my God, he must be so scared. Like, Lee Strunk is probably this crazy, violent, dangerous guy. And we almost feel like we are worried for Jensen, and we understand why he's so scared. But then the irony, right? So the final thing I love is the irony that's used here with this figure of irony is a figure of speech where the opposite of what we expect to happen happens. So at the very end, the author pops in one dialogue line. The whole time he's just told the story, but now he actually uses a quote, and that man's crazy. I stole his fucking jackknife. Lee Strunk says that. So at the end, we realize the guy did take the knife. It wasn't like he didn't take his knife and, Jensen is so crazy and violent and just did this to him. It was true.